Picture this. You're driving alone on a desolate stretch of highway just after midnight, your headlights cutting through the darkness, when suddenly you see her. A teenage girl in a faded blue dress, walking along the shoulder of mile marker 6, her thumb raised for a ride. But here's what makes your blood run cold. Dozens of drivers have reported seeing this exact same girl, in the exact same dress, at the exact same spot, for over 20 years. How can someone who died in a horrific bus crash in 2003 still be walking these roads, desperately searching for a ride that will never come? The locals won't drive that stretch after dark anymore, and the few who do swear they can still hear the screech of brakes and twisted metal when they pass that cursed mile marker. Tonight, you're about to discover why some souls never find their way home, trapped forever in an endless loop between life and death, between the moment of impact and the desperate hope of escape. This is the true account of Sarah Mitchell. 17 years old when her school bus skidded off the road during a sudden ice storm, killing her and 5 other students instantly. But while the others found peace, Sarah remains, still walking, still waiting, still raising her thumb to every passing car, as if she doesn't know she's already dead. Multiple witnesses have documented their encounters, from truck drivers who've slammed their brakes thinking they almost hit someone, to families who've called 911 reporting an injured girl who vanishes the moment help arrives. State police have logged over 300 reports of the girl at mile marker 6, each description identical down to the tear in her dress and the blood on her forehead, each encounter ending the same way. She disappears into the night, only to return again when the next lonely driver passes through. What you're about to hear will make you think twice before stopping for hitchhikers, especially on dark highways where the past refuses to stay buried. If this story sends chills down your spine, hit that subscribe button and join us on the Fearway. The first documented encounter happened on a cold February night in 2004, just 11 months after the accident, when long-haul trucker Marcus Webb was hauling a load of electronics from Detroit to Nashville. His CB radio crackling with static as he approached the infamous stretch of Highway 49. Marcus had driven this route hundreds of times before, knew every curve and grade change by heart, but something felt different that night. The air seemed heavier, colder than the weather report had predicted, and his dashboard clock kept flickering between 12:47 and 12:48, stuck in a moment that refused to pass. As he rounded the bend before mile marker 6, his headlights caught movement on the shoulder, a figure walking with an unnatural steadiness against the bitter wind. And when he got closer, he saw her clearly. A teenage girl in a powder blue dress that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Her dark hair hanging limp and wet despite the fact it hadn't rained in weeks. Marcus later told investigators that what struck him most wasn't her presence on that desolate road, but the way she moved. Mechanical, purposeful, like someone following a script they'd memorized but never understood. Her arm rising to signal for a ride with the precision of clockwork. He slowed down, his 40-ton rig groaning as he pulled toward the shoulder. And that's when he noticed the details that would haunt him for years. The tear running diagonally across her dress from shoulder to hip, the dark stain on her forehead that looked fresh despite being months old, and her eyes. God, her eyes. Staring straight ahead at something only she could see, never blinking, never focusing on his approaching vehicle. Marcus grabbed his CB to call for help, thinking she must be in shock or injured. But when he looked back, she was gone, vanished between one heartbeat and the next, leaving only the faint impression of footprints in the frost that disappeared before he could fully register them. He drove straight through to Nashville without stopping, his hands shaking on the wheel, and filed a report with the state police the next morning, becoming the first of hundreds who would encounter Sarah Mitchell's restless spirit. The police initially dismissed it as fatigue hallucination, but when 3 more drivers reported the exact same girl in the exact same spot within a week, wearing the exact same torn blue dress with the exact same wound on her forehead, the reports started piling up in a file that would grow thicker with each passing month. What makes Sarah's haunting particularly disturbing is the consistency of the encounters. Every witness describes the same details, from the way she walks with her left foot dragging slightly behind to the pattern of mud stains on her dress that match the police photos from the accident scene. Details that were never released to the public, details that only someone who was there that night could know. The encounters escalated through the spring of 2004, with each new sighting adding layers to the growing mystery of Sarah Mitchell's eternal walk along Highway 49. And it was Karen Holloway, a night shift nurse driving home from Mercy General Hospital, who first discovered the terrible pattern hidden within these apparitions. Karen had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift in the emergency room when she encountered Sarah at 2:17 a.m. on a foggy April morning. But unlike the others who simply saw a hitchhiker, Karen stopped. She couldn't help herself, her medical training overriding every instinct screaming at her to keep driving. She pulled over 20 feet past the girl, watching in her rearview mirror as Sarah approached with that same mechanical gait witnesses had described. And when Karen rolled down her passenger window, she heard something that turned her blood to ice. The sound of children crying, distant and muffled, as if coming from deep underwater. Sarah stood there beside the car, her lips moving silently, forming words Karen couldn't hear over the phantom sounds of that long-ago crash. And that's when the nurse noticed the girl's dress wasn't just torn. It was torn in the exact pattern of a seatbelt failure. The fabric ripped along stress points that told the story of violent deceleration and impact. Karen reached for her cell phone to call 911, but the screen went black, the battery dead despite being fully charged moments before. And when she looked up, Sarah was leaning into the car, her face inches from Karen's, her breath fogging the window with ice crystals that spelled out a single word: home. The temperature inside the car plummeted 30 degrees in seconds, frost spreading across the windshield in spiraling patterns that looked like reaching hands. And Karen could see her own breath as she whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her for protection against restless spirits. Sarah pulled back suddenly, her head tilting at an unnatural angle as if listening to something. And then she spoke. Not with her mouth, but directly into Karen's mind, a voice like breaking glass and grinding metal. They won't let me leave. The others are still on the bus, still screaming, still dying. Every night at 12:47. Every night forever. Karen floored the accelerator, her tires spinning on suddenly icy pavement. And as she fled, she glimpsed something in her mirror that the police report would later redact as too disturbing for public record. The transparent outline of a school bus behind Sarah, filled with shadow figures pressed against windows that dripped with condensation, their mouths open in silent screams. The next morning, Karen found her passenger seat covered in a fine layer of mud and ice that matched soil samples from the original crash site. And her car's clock remained frozen at 12:47 for 3 days before suddenly resuming normal function. What Karen had discovered, what she tried desperately to tell anyone who would listen, was that Sarah wasn't alone on that highway. She was the only one visible, the only one strong enough to manifest fully, while 5 other souls remained trapped in that phantom bus, reliving their final moments in an endless loop of terror that played out just beyond the veil of the living world. The investigation that followed Karen Holloway's encounter would uncover a truth far more disturbing than anyone in the county was prepared to face. Beginning with retired Detective Marcus Webb, who had worked the original bus crash in 2003 and had kept his own secret file of unexplained phenomena surrounding that tragic night. Marcus revealed to Karen that the official report had omitted crucial details. The bus hadn't simply skidded on ice, but had swerved to avoid something in the road, something 7 surviving students described as a wall of darkness that moved like water. And in the moments before impact, witnesses reported that all sound had ceased, creating a vacuum of silence so complete that even the storm seemed to pause. The detective's private notes contained testimonies deemed too bizarre for official records. The bus driver's final radio transmission mentioning children in the road who shouldn't be there. Temperature readings showing the crash site was 40 degrees colder than anywhere else on the highway. And most unnervingly, 6 watches recovered from the victims, all stopped at different times, spanning exactly 13 minutes before 12:47 a.m. Marcus had continued investigating on his own time, documenting how every year on the anniversary of the crash, electronic devices within a mile radius of Marker 6 would malfunction. GPS systems would show drivers located in impossible coordinates that didn't exist on any map. And radio stations would briefly transmit the sound of school children singing a song that hadn't been popular since the 1950s. Together, Marcus and Karen began interviewing other witnesses, uncovering a pattern that suggested Sarah wasn't trying to get home. She was trying to warn people away from something far worse that lurked at mile marker 6, something that had been there long before the bus crash, something that local indigenous tribes had marked with warning stones that the highway construction had foolishly removed in 1987. They discovered that Sarah Mitchell had been gifted with what her grandmother called the sight, the ability to perceive things others couldn't. And in her final moments, she had seen what was waiting in that darkness. An ancient hunger that fed on sudden death, that had been drawing vehicles off the road for decades, creating a collection of souls it kept like trophies in a realm between worlds. The breakthrough came when they found Sarah's diary in her family's attic. The final entry, written the morning of her death, describing recurring nightmares about the thing that lives under the road. Dreams where she saw herself trying to warn drivers, trying to be a guardian even after death, standing as a barrier between the living and something that viewed the highway as its hunting ground. Marcus and Karen realized that every person who had seen Sarah and kept driving had narrowly escaped something following behind her. Something she was desperately trying to keep at bay, using her own trapped soul as a shield against a predator that had claimed that stretch of road long before humans ever laid asphalt over the ancient pathways. The most chilling discovery came from thermal imaging equipment Marcus borrowed from a paranormal investigator. Footage showing that behind Sarah's cold signature was an enormous void of absolute zero. A massive absence of heat that suggested something was consuming the very energy of existence itself. Growing stronger with each passing year, waiting for the barrier Sarah created to finally fail. Armed with this terrifying knowledge, Karen and Marcus devised a desperate plan to document what was really happening at mile marker 6. Setting up a network of cameras and electromagnetic sensors along the highway on the next anniversary of the crash. But what they captured that night would haunt them forever. Sarah appeared at 11:34 p.m., exactly as witnesses had described. But this time the equipment revealed what human eyes couldn't see. Behind her walked dozens of other figures, all victims of the road dating back decades, each one fighting to hold back something massive that writhed and pulsed with impossible geometries. A thing that existed in more dimensions than the human mind could process. The thermal cameras showed Sarah at the front of this ghostly battalion, her arms spread wide as if holding an invisible barrier, while the thing behind them pressed forward with tentacles of pure void that deleted reality wherever they touched. And Marcus realized with growing horror that Sarah and the other spirits were losing ground. That each year the entity grew stronger while their resistance weakened. The electromagnetic readings spiked to equipment-breaking levels when midnight approached. And through the static-filled audio, they heard Sarah's voice for the first time. Not speaking, but screaming. A continuous wail of effort and agony as she held the line against something that wanted to spill onto the highway and claim every living soul that passed. The footage showed cars driving through this invisible battle, their occupants completely unaware that they were passing through a war zone between the dead and something far worse. And Karen noticed that every vehicle that passed seemed to give Sarah a momentary surge of strength, as if the life force of the living recharged her ability to fight. They discovered that the entity had a pattern. It could only hunt during the 13 minutes before 12:47 a.m., the exact time frame when the bus crash had occurred, creating a temporal wound that the creature exploited. But Sarah had learned to use this limitation against it, appearing earlier to warn drivers away, ensuring fewer souls would be on the road during those crucial minutes. The most horrifying revelation came when Marcus cross-referenced historical records and found that every major accident on that stretch of highway had occurred during those same 13 minutes across different dates, suggesting the entity had been feeding for over a century, growing stronger with each tragedy until Sarah's unique gift allowed her to perceive and combat it, even in death. As they watched the footage frame by frame, they saw something that made them both weep. In the final seconds before 12:47, Sarah would turn toward the camera, her ghostly face clear for just a moment. And she was smiling through her exhaustion, knowing that she had held the darkness back for another night, saved more lives that would never know her sacrifice. But her form was notably more transparent than in previous recordings, suggesting that even supernatural endurance had its limits. And one day, perhaps soon, Sarah Mitchell would no longer be strong enough to stand guard at mile marker 6, leaving the highway defenseless against the ancient hunger that waited patiently in the spaces between reality. The revelation of Sarah's true purpose sent Karen and Marcus into a frantic search for a solution, driving them to consult every paranormal expert, medium, and occult scholar within 5 states. But each consultation led to the same devastating conclusion. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a victim who chose to become a guardian. She was specifically targeted by the entity because of a rare spiritual resonance that only manifests in one person per generation, a frequency that allows the soul to perceive and interact with interdimensional predators. Father Rodriguez from St. Augustine's, the last surviving witness to the original bus crash, finally revealed what the official reports had omitted. In the moments before impact, Sarah had been singing in the back of the bus, an old hymn her grandmother had taught her. And multiple survivors reported that the song continued even after the crash, growing louder as Sarah died, creating what he described as a wall of sound that seemed to push against something terrible, trying to enter through the twisted metal. The priest's hands shook as he showed them Sarah's diary, recovered from the wreckage but never returned to her family, where she had documented recurring nightmares for months before her death. Visions of a massive eye opening beneath the highway, tentacles of darkness reaching up through the asphalt, and her standing alone against it with nothing but her voice and her will. The final entry, dated the morning of the crash, simply read, I understand now why I keep having these dreams. Something is coming through, and I'm the only one who can stop it, even if it means I can never leave. Marcus discovered that the highway itself was built over an ancient Native American burial ground, but not just any burial ground. This was where the tribe had imprisoned something they called the hunger that walks between, a creature that existed partially in our reality and partially in a dimension of pure consumption, held in check by sacred geometry and blood sacrifice until modern construction destroyed the containment symbols. The tribe's descendants had tried to warn the Highway Commission, but their protests were dismissed as superstition. And when the road was completed in 1952, the first accidents began within days, each death weakening the remaining barriers until Sarah's unique sacrifice created a new form of protection. Karen's research uncovered a pattern even more disturbing. Every person who had extensively studied mile marker 6 eventually disappeared. Their cars found abandoned on different highways across the country, always with the radios playing the same hymn Sarah had been singing when she died. And she realized with growing dread that the entity was learning, adapting, trying to eliminate those who might find a way to permanently stop it. The most recent disappearance had been just 3 weeks ago. A quantum physicist who had theorized that Sarah's spirit was actually creating a localized time loop, resetting those 13 minutes every night to prevent the entity from fully manifesting. But the effort was slowly unraveling the fabric of reality around mile marker 6, creating what he called a temporal hemorrhage that would eventually collapse, taking Sarah's soul and releasing the creature simultaneously. The temporal hemorrhage reached its breaking point on the anniversary of Sarah's death, when Karen and Marcus arrived at mile marker 6 to witness what they feared would be the final collapse. But instead, they found Sarah standing in the middle of the highway, no longer walking, no longer seeking a ride, her eyes reflecting an ancient exhaustion as she spoke for the first time in 20 years. "I can't hold it back anymore." The asphalt beneath her feet began to crack in perfect spirals, releasing wisps of darkness that writhed like living smoke. And Karen understood with terrible clarity that Sarah wasn't asking for help. She was warning them to run. Marcus grabbed the old hymnal from their research, the same song Sarah had been singing. And as their voices joined together, Sarah's form began to shimmer, her sacrifice finally acknowledged by someone who understood its true weight. The entity's hunger pressed against reality like a massive hand against glass, spiderweb fractures spreading across the night sky itself. But Sarah's spirit suddenly blazed with renewed purpose, drawing on the strength of their recognition to weave one final barrier. In that moment, every driver who had ever seen her, every report filed, every prayer whispered in fear became threads in an enormous net of collective memory, transforming Sarah from a lone guardian into something more, a legend powerful enough to hold back the dark. The highway fell silent, mile marker 6 standing empty for the first time in 2 decades. But locals still report that on foggy nights, you can hear that old hymn drifting through the air. A reminder that Sarah Mitchell finally found her ride home, leaving behind a protection woven from sacrifice, memory, and the stubborn refusal of one teenage girl to let an ancient evil win.